Hey there, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Plant Medicine for PTSD podcast. If you are watching this video, I apologize for my scruffy ass appearance, but we've been on the road and it is hard to stay on top of trimming your fucking hair and beard. I'm just holding out to get a haircut once we make it back to Mexico. So for this episode, this is just going to be me today, and we're probably going to have some more of these solo episodes intermixed, interspersed, if you will, with our interviews with other folks, because there's some other topics that I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive into. So before we get into that topic today, I am going to hit you with a little legal disclaimer. I am not this kind of doctor, okay? I'm not a mental health professional. Nothing that we say on this podcast, nothing that the company Becoming Om does should be construed as medical advice. It's not a substitute for medical treatment, and we do not intend to diagnose or treat any kind of actual mental health issue, okay? All that we do is we provide some counseling, some advice on how people who are dealing with these things can go about navigating that and working with things like plant medicine for the best effect. This doesn't really apply here, but I should also throw it in there. We don't sell or provide any substances, so don't ask. And for the government agencies tracking us, we don't do that. All right, we're good, law-abiding citizens. All right, so with that said, with that out of the way, what I do want to talk about is the issue of substance abuse, because this is actually something that we've seen quite a bit within our coaching program and within our ayahuasca retreats. We've seen it change quite a bit over the course of these programs. Now, granted, we've not worked with anyone, at least inside the coaching program, with anything like a heroin addiction or an opiate addiction, something like that. What I'm talking about here is alcoholism. I'm talking about abusing cannabis. I would lump things like screen time into that, where somebody goes from scrolling TikTok 8 hours a day or watching porn compulsively to basically not engaging in that anymore. Honestly, things like caffeine fall into that category as well. And I just had my friend Nick on our podcast a couple weeks ago. We just had Toby on, which that episode probably will be released after this. So if you're listening to this and you're confused, you haven't missed anything. But Nick was a self-described alcoholic, and Toby was drinking something like a half liter of vodka a day when we met. And I have another friend, Damien, who we'll have on soon, who was smoking 10 grams of weed a day when he came into the program. Now, if you're not a weed smoker, that is a preposterous amount of weed, because that's how the Canadian government deals with their problems, apparently, is they just throw weed at people and hope that they go away. And then if they don't go away, they tell them to kill themselves. That's a fucking crazy thing you should look into, is the assisted suicide in Canada. But that's a digression. So yeah, this dude Damien was prescribed 10 grams of cannabis a day, and he was smoking all of it, which is fucking insane. And then he was wondering why he had brain fog or why he couldn't focus. I'm like, bro, I think we can put that mystery to bed here pretty quick. But my point here in all of this is that these people were basically self-medicating with alcohol or with cannabis, or other examples like with 8 hours of TikTok videos. And they were engaging in these things not because they wanted to destroy their health or not because they wanted to waste all of their time. They were engaging in this because they found it to be a viable solution to the problems that they were encountering. So Nick found that drinking helped him to fall asleep. He found that it helped to dampen his social anxiety when he left the house. Toby, same thing. The drinking helped him to basically avoid all the demons in his head. Same thing with Damien. The smoking just helped him to get through the day, so he wasn't just overcome by his anxiety. And this is kind of really the point that I'm trying to make here with this whole podcast, is that most of the time, I'm a big fan of made-up stats, so I'll call it 98% of the time, when people are engaging in this stuff, when they're drinking, smoking in excess, they're not doing it because they want to destroy themselves. They're actually doing it because it is a solution to their problem. They don't have a drinking problem. They don't have a smoking problem. They don't have a screen use problem. They have a drinking solution to their anxiety problem. They have a smoking solution to their depression problem. Or they have, a screen use solution to their sadness. I don't know, that was a bad example. I should have stopped after the first two. Those sounded a lot better than my last one. But you get what I'm trying to say here. These things that people seek out, they actually help them in some way. They wouldn't be engaging in it otherwise. And now the issue at hand here is that those are not viable solutions. They're not sustainable long-term solutions. Obviously, drinking to fall asleep is not a good solution for your sleeping problem, but people do it because it fucking works and it helps them. And most of the time, they're at a loss of what else to do because they look around and see, like Nick was describing, he looks around and sees his buddy on the force and, well, everyone else is drinking, seems to work for them, so I'll start drinking too. Damien, the fucking government prescribed him cannabis for his PTSD symptoms. So, like, okay, I guess I'll do that. Obviously, though, that's not a real fix. And that's really where the work lies in healing, is to actually heal those underlying issues. So, what I want to talk about here, though, is how that actually works, how to go about actually stopping that sort of destructive behavior. Because if all you do is just try to stop that thing, obviously that's not going to work. Because for one thing, you're kind of addicted to it itself. And for another, again, like that was your fix, that was your Band-Aid. And yeah, it is only a Band-Aid solution, but it's still a solution. So if you just take that away, now all you have is the problem left. So you drink because you're anxious. Okay, I'm going to force myself to stop drinking. Now I'm more fucking anxious and now I want to drink more than ever. You can see how that's not a really good plan of attack at all. So when you have someone like that who's numbing themselves with alcohol or numbing themselves with cannabis, the real question becomes, okay, why are we doing this? What are you actually seeking to avoid, seeking to numb yourself from? What are you trying to fix here? And then how can we implement better solutions to that thing? Because when we have better solutions, the desire for the alcohol or the desire for the cannabis is going to naturally fall away over time. And now I am speaking primarily just from experience here. I'm speaking from experience of doing this with over 100 people inside of our microdosing program. But, excuse my water drinking noises if you're just listening to this, but I'm not just pulling this out of my ass here. There's some very good research. Like there's a gentleman named Johann Hari, who's an author. He wrote this book called Chasing the Scream. And that book, it's more focused on the war on drugs and kind of the issues with all of the laws surrounding that. But he goes into basically why people get addicted to substances. He focuses a little bit more on the opiates. But what he talks about is that this is the opiate epidemic. It's not just an epidemic of people being addicted. It's an epidemic of people who feel disconnected from society, and it's an epidemic of people who feel pain, this sort of mental, spiritual, metaphysical pain that they seek to self-medicate with these substances. Same thing, there's a guy named Dr. Carl Hart, I think, who talks about how the drugs themselves are not necessarily bad. Like he goes pretty far with it. I think he has a book literally called like Responsible Drug Use for Adults or something like that. And he literally talks about having a healthy recreational practice of using heroin, which I don't really recommend. But the point being that it's not heroin that's actually a problem. It's the lack of social connections. It's the lack of friendships. It's the feeling of isolation. It's the feeling of pain that people are trying to escape. It's the feeling of hopelessness that people are trying to escape. And that's actually what leads them down the path of addiction. So the point being, the substance that they're using is not actually the problem. The substance is a solution, albeit not a very good one, but it's a solution to some kind of underlying problem. And now, where the microdosing program comes into play here, where what I've seen work really, really well. For example, this dude Toby, when he came to us, like I said, he was drinking, I forget exactly what it was, maybe like half a liter of vodka a day. He was on 400 milligrams of this drug called Prestique, which is an antidepressant. I think the standard dose, like starting dose, is like 50 milligrams. So he was on enough for a very sad horse, as I like to joke. So it's a huge amount of antidepressants, drinking a ton, tons of anger. He was actually smoking a ton of weed as well before he started working with us. And when he came into the program, one of the things he told me that he wanted to work on was to cut back on his drinking. And if you're familiar with any of our stuff, if you've seen some of the stuff that we put out, you know that we have this whole habit tracking system. And he said that he wanted to put on his habit tracker to not drink alcohol. And what I told him is that I don't think it's a very good idea to apply the discipline and willpower of the habit tracker to abstaining from alcohol. I thought that he was setting himself up for failure. Because if your goal is to not drink any alcohol and now he has a beer that day, well, now he failed and now he feels like a piece of shit, and that cycle just continues of feeling bad about yourself, and so you drink to avoid feeling bad about yourself. And so what I told him is, let's focus on what I called positively framed habits. So a negatively framed habit would be like, I will not do X, Y, or Z. A positively framed habit is, I will do X, Y, or Z, right? You see what I'm saying? So this has actually become codified into like our system that we apply for all of our clients from here on out, because I saw it work so well for Toby. And what we did, again, is not focus on not drinking. Instead, we focused on, okay, today I will go for a walk. Today I will meditate. Today I will write in my journal. Today I will set an intention. And maybe today I will microdose. And what we saw is that over the course of, I think he worked with us with the microdosing for about 6 months. Over the course of those 6 months, we got his drinking down to 0 in preparation for his ayahuasca retreat. And now he's at a point where, he'll have a beer with dinner, or he'll have, a glass of wine at a nice restaurant, or a couple of beers on a hot day, because he lives in Mexico, and a beer on a hot day is pretty nice in Mexico. So he's at the point where he can actually enjoy beer recreationally in a healthy way. And this is, again, why I'm not a fan of complete abstinence, because for him to just have to avoid alcohol for the rest of his life, I don't think that's a really great solution. Because again, for him, the alcohol was not the problem. Now, maybe there are some folks out there who need that approach. I know that's what things like Alcoholics Anonymous, NA, like those kind of programs, I know they preach that abstinence. I don't really think that it's a great approach for this reason. So literally all that we did with Toby, I shouldn't say all that we did because it's kind of a huge fucking deal for him, but what we did was we addressed his underlying issues, his sense of disconnection from himself as a result of being a sexual abuse survivor, as a result of being abandoned by his mother, as a result of everything that comes with that from childhood, and then a career in the military on top of it, and then a traumatic brain injury on top of that. We healed all of that shit through the use of microdosing, through ayahuasca, honestly, but also through journaling, through meditation, through connecting intentionally with himself, with God, with his wife, with his friends. And we got him to the point where he didn't need to numb himself anymore with the alcohol. My buddy Damien, the guy who was smoking 10 grams of weed per day, what I told him was, listen, man, we're not going to try to cut back on the weed whatsoever. I want you to smoke as much weed as you want, whenever you want to. The only change that you must make is that I told him he has to start setting an intention when he smokes. So again, we're taking this thing where he was using it to disconnect, he was using it to numb himself and to sort of escape the world. We apply setting an intention to it, and now it becomes a means of forging new connections, of connecting more deeply to himself, to his feelings, to his artwork. He's a tattoo artist. And we found that just that little one change of setting an intention, it initially cut back his weed consumption by probably about 1/3. So he went from smoking like 3 grams with his morning coffee down to 1 joint. Like that was all that he found that he needed. So again, I didn't tell him to drink to smoke any less. We made one change of setting an intention, which started to address his issues of not having connections. And just in doing that, we started to reduce his cannabis consumption to a better level. There's a principle in Taoism called Wu Wei, which means something like action without action, or doing without doing. And I think that that's kind of the principle that's behind this stuff here, where we're taking this indirect approach where I'm not telling them like, okay, you have to stop drinking or you have to stop smoking. In fact, I'm telling them not to tell themselves that. All that we're doing is addressing these underlying issues. And now, I just talked about this intention setting stuff with the cannabis. This is not the time or place to get into the weeds of intention setting, but the intention setting thing, it's a super duper important piece of an ayahuasca ceremony. I think it's one of the most important pieces of structured intentional microdosing. And honestly, I think it applies at the same level to any plant medicine. We don't often think of cannabis as a plant medicine because you can buy it at a fucking gas station. So it doesn't seem like this sacred thing, but I think its transformative power is actually just as potent potentially as ayahuasca is. And so by encouraging Damien to set an intention with it, he was able to actually connect with that medicine in a healing way instead of this sort of self-destructive way. And like I said, just that cut back his consumption by about 1/3. And over time, throughout the microdosing program, the rest of the changes that he made, it's probably closer to like he cut back by more like 2/3 or even more, because he was smoking 10 grams a day and now he's probably at like 1 or 2, which is still a good amount of weed, honestly. But fuck, he gets to actually enjoy it now. And it's a constructive part of his day where he uses it to connect to nature, to his family, to his dogs, and to his artwork, instead of just smoking to escape the demons and escape the torment going on inside of his mind. And honestly, maybe that's a topic for another day as well, but I think that that's a big part of this too. That's a big part of this healing process, is realizing for especially for veterans, for first responders, but really for anybody, recognizing that you're not at war with your demons. Like there's, especially in America, especially with veterans, I feel like there's this kind of talk of like waging war inside your head or fighting your demons, all of this kind of stuff. But that perspective just perpetuates that you are at war. And in the context of this, it perpetuates that there's something to avoid inside your head, or it perpetuates that something is wrong with you and you need to escape that in some way. And so you turn to drinking. So this goes for Toby, it goes for Damien, it goes for Nick. We help them get to a point where it's not that they won that battle against their demons, but it's that they stopped fighting that battle, and therefore they didn't need to numb themselves, or they didn't need to escape those feelings anymore. And the desire for smoking or the desire for drinking just sort of naturally fell away on its own. And now, I keep referencing these three guys, Toby, Nick, and Damien, and that's only because they've given me express permission to use their stories and to use their faces on our Instagram posts and things like that. We take privacy very seriously, actually, inside of our program, because we've had a ton of retired special forces people, retired police officers, firefighters, some former intelligence officers, things like that go through our program. And so I don't talk about all those people by name because they've asked us not to. So I know it sounds like I just keep talking about the same 3 stories, but literally I could tell you close to 100 stories about this. I just have these 3 guys who have said, yes, please use my name and use my face to promote this stuff. So I feel like I have been rambling a little bit, so I just kind of want to tie a little bow on this. What I'm saying here is that most of the time, if you have some sort of self-destructive behavior, whether it's drinking, smoking, scrolling, porn, gambling, whatever floats your boat, when you have this sort of self-destructive thing, more often than not, you're not engaging in it because you want to actively destroy your life. Maybe there is an element in there of like wanting to die sort of passively. I've heard that said about smokers, especially like smoking cigarettes, that every smoker sort of wants to die and they're just hurrying along the process. So maybe that's part of it, but it's not like you're actively trying to end your life sooner. Rather, what you're doing is you're grasping at straws. You're just trying to find something that's going to help you get through the day. Something that's going to help you deal with your crippling anxiety, something that's going to help you get out of bed in the morning and confront the day, or maybe something that's going to help you to actually fall asleep at night and not be plagued by nightmares. So you're reaching for this stuff to numb yourself, to disconnect you from the pain that you feel, or just to mask things so that you can put on a brave face and kind of go about your day. The solution is not to just take away that thing, because that thing is helping you. So if weed is helping you to fall asleep and you stop smoking, now you don't sleep. What have we fixed? If alcohol is helping you to get out of fucking bed in the morning and go about your day, and you take that away, what have we fixed? Nothing. The real solution, the real long-term sustainable fix, is to figure out what those underlying things are that you are avoiding or that you are numbing yourself from, and figure out how we can help that. And that's where our microdosing program has come along for most people. Or I shouldn't say for most people, for a lot of people who are dealing with this stuff, where we work on developing better habits and routines so that we're starting to implement better solutions like journaling, meditating, exercise, things like that. We do the journaling and the shadow work so that we can uncover these quote unquote demons that you're fighting, and importantly, start to make friends with them instead of just fighting them all the time. And then, of course, we set intentions with the medicine. We ask the medicine for help as well. So we're kind of dealing with it on this, call it a spiritual, metaphysical angle as well. So if you are somebody who's listening to this and you're kind of nodding your head like, yeah, that sounds a lot like me actually, then I would really love to help you. Even if it's just having a conversation about where this stuff is coming from, I would love to help you figure out some better habits and routines that you can start implementing, maybe even without any of the plant medicine stuff, if that's not your thing. Or maybe if you're curious about the plant medicine stuff, we can actually just start with cleaning up habits and routines and see how much of a change that has. I will literally do that with you for free. I fucking love doing this stuff. So if you're listening to this and you're like, fuck, that sounds like it would help me, please send me a message and we will literally sit down together. I'll actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the exact intake form that our clients get, which gives me a snapshot of where things are at with your consumption of alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, cannabis, etc., and a snapshot of what you're actually doing with your life right now, like how you're spending your time. And we'll sit down together for half an hour and come up with a plan to sort some of this shit out. I would love to do that. So if you want to do that, send me a message. Send me a message on Instagram at becoming.ohm or send me an email at hello@becomingohm.com. All right, I do want to keep these short, so hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it was a little bit informative, or maybe at least just validating your feelings when you're like, hey, I've tried to stop drinking and my life got substantially worse. Like, yeah, I'm not actually surprised by that at all if you haven't put anything in place to treat those underlying issues. So send me a message if you want to talk about this stuff. Hopefully it helped. I definitely encourage you to check out that book, Chasing the Scream by Johan Hari, or at least listen to some interviews that this guy has done. I think they're very, very informative. And yeah, let's wrap it up there before I get too rambly. So send me a message, get in touch. Thank you very much for listening. Keep an eye out for more episodes with these people like Toby and Damien. They'll be released shortly. And until next time, peace out. Hare Krishna.